On this edition of Fulton at Work, a pipe dream of reusing the county's wasted water comes to fruition thanks to the Johns Creek Reuse Water Main Project. And we'll explain how your voice goes a long way in the improvement of your local library. I'm Darrell Carver. All that and more starts right now on Fulton at Work. Water levels are on the decline while watering bans remain in effect for Fulton County. Thankfully, there's now a way to use used water, that is, to help many commercial and residential properties to look their best. FGTV's Felicia Church has the story.
With drought issues facing most of Metro Atlanta this summer, figuring out how to keep the county looking beautiful without wasting water was problematic. Part of that issue was solved thanks to the Johns Creek Reuse Water Main Project. It's designed to provide commercial companies such as golf courses and churches the reusable water they need to keep the greens and landscaping looking their best.
3, 2, 1.
At a groundbreaking ceremony in early June at the Johns Creek Environmental Campus, District 1 Commissioner Liz Hausman and Johns Creek Mayor Mike Bodker spoke of the importance of this project.
This is a very important project to the northeast side of Fulton County. This will allow us to reestablish our irrigation with gray water to our large commercial customers, many of whom are golf courses, and they depend on water to operate.
It is an opportunity to bring back what we had before, which was an important asset for our large landowners, namely our golf courses, our places of worship, and the parks in Johns Creek. It's an opportunity that in the worst of times, when we have the most severe droughts, when these entities that are so important to the citizens and visitors of Johns Creek would be not able to keep their properties looking great and bringing an invitation for folks to come and therefore losing jobs, this is what's going to sustain them through those times, and it's so vitally important.
Located in Roswell and Johns Creek, the installation involves about 24,000 linear feet of new iron piping, all marked with a purple color.
The pipes are purple to designate that it's reuse water and not drinking water or sanitary water. Drinking water is typically a blue color, whereas this shows that it's unchlorinated water, whereas drinking water is typically chlorinated. So therefore, it kind of provides everybody that extra bit of reminding that this is a different type of water and don't drink it.
The use of non-potable water sources for irrigation is an important component in the sustainable growth and development of the North Fulton County community.
It's just a phenomenal coming together of capabilities, environmental concerns, and then real customer needs.
The Johns Creek Reuse Water Main Project is expected to be complete by February 2018. Reporting for FGTV, I'm Felicia Church.
Thank you, Felicia. When we come back, we're going to talk with David Clark from the Public Works Department to learn a little bit more about the benefits of this water reuse project. So please stay with us. Welcome back to Fulton at Work. I'm Darrell Carver. How is it possible for used water to be reused without interfering with regular drinking water? Joining us now to explain how that process works is David Clark from the Public Works Department here in Fulton County. Mr. Clark, first of all, thank you for joining us here on Fulton at Work.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Please tell us a little bit more about the Johns Creek Reuse Water Main Project and how it came about.
Sure. The Johns Creek Reuse Project actually has its roots over 10 years ago, when the Collie Creek facility in the far northeastern part of Fulton County in Johns Creek was decommissioned and the Johns Creek facility became into operation. The area around Johns Creek was receiving reuse water from the Collie Creek facility, but once that stopped being used, we needed to switch over to capture the reuse water out of the Johns Creek facility and bring that back up into the Johns Creek community.
Now, what exactly is reuse water and how is it kept away from regular drinking water?
Sure. Reuse water is the very, very last part of the water treatment plant process. So when we get the raw sewage into the plant, and it goes through the different variety of treatments, including membrane, to remove all the bacteria, all the impurities from it. Right before it gets put back into the Chattahoochee River, we actually intercept some of that water and send it through this reuse system for use for irrigation purposes primarily. It's very, very clean water. It's not drinkable because it hasn't been treated with chlorine to actually be used for drinking purposes, but it is perfectly safe for interaction, for people to actually come in contact with it. It gets dumped into the Chattahoochee River, and so therefore it sustains life there. So overall, it is very, very clean water. It's just not treated to the level to allow you to drink it.
And no, briefly you were going into the process there. Go a little bit more into that, and because I understand it all begins really at Johns Creek Environmental Campus.
It does. As all the raw sewage comes into the Johns Creek campus there on Holcomb Bridge Road near the river, it goes through what's considered primary treatment of the wastewater. We start removing some of the trash and debris that comes in, a lot of sand, dirt, those types of things. We move that out of the water first, and then the biological process of treating the water and letting the bacteria eat the rest of the impurities happens there on the campus. It then the wastewater then goes through a membrane system which removes even more of the impurities. It has a little bit of disinfection through a UV application, and then it goes into a chamber where air is reintroduced into the water, and then typically it will get discharged into the river, but in this case some of the water will be pulled away from that and sent into this reuse line.
Now overall, how much pipeline will need to be installed for this project?
There's about 5.5 miles of pipeline altogether that will be installed in two major sections. The first section starts at the Johns Creek facility on Holcomb Bridge Road, goes up Barnwell Road, through the Country Club of the South property to Old Alabama Road. That's about 4.5 miles. And then it's going to tie into the existing system that was put in place back when the Cauley Creek facility was in operation, up to where Woodward Academy is and into Johns Creek for the last mile.
Now, why was purple chosen to represent the pipes and the hydrants?
The simple answer is purple was the last remaining color. When reuse pipes first started coming into play in the 1970s, utility pipes have been traditionally color-coded to whatever purpose that they serve. For instance, blue has always been used for drinking water, green has been used for sewage, red is used for power, yellow is used for natural gas. So all the other colors were taken. Purple was one of the few colors remaining, and so when California, who really was the innovator in reuse, started putting it into their systems, they chose purple, and the rest of the country then adopted that same color scheme.
Now, how much water will be pumped through these pipes per day?
The entire Johns Creek facility right now is treating about 8 million gallons of water a day. It can handle up to 15 million at the very peak period. This system for reuse is designed to capture about 4 million of that, so about half of what's being treated today, and it can go up to almost 6 million.
And talk a little bit about the commercial entities that will have access to this water in particular.
This area of Johns Creek has some very, very large water irrigation customers that right now are using drinking water for their irrigation purposes because reuse is no longer available. These include 5 major golf courses that are in the area, a couple of large churches that have large property uses will be using the system, and then the city of Johns Creek actually will be using it as part of the park's irrigation needs as well.
Now, how will all of this eventually help the environment?
Well, as I said a couple seconds ago, the current users are actually using drinking water, and so we are taking water out of the Chattahoochee to treat for drinking purposes, only to put it on for irrigation land applications. So it actually is taking a resource and diverting it from drinking water to irrigation. So this is actually going to reduce some of our drinking water demand that we are now treating on a daily basis out of the Chattahoochee River.
We talked earlier about the Johns Creek Environmental Campus. For those folks who don't know that much about it, please tell them a little bit more about that facility in particular.
Yeah, Johns Creek environmental campus is really the crown jewel in our wastewater treatment facility right now for Fulton County. In fact, it has won 2 years of the wastewater plant operations of the year for the entire state of Georgia. It won in 2014 and 2016. It was constructed during the mid-2000s and became operational in 2009. So it's been in operation now for about 8 years. And at the time when it was constructed, it was actually the largest plant that uses membrane technology to treat wastewater. There are larger plants now, but a number of plants throughout the country looked at the Johns Creek facility to figure out how we're using membranes to treat the wastewater very effectively, very cleanly, and then took our technology and actually implemented it on a larger scale in other places throughout the country. But membrane technology really is where the future of wastewater is going. It requires a smaller footprint than the larger plants that you saw in the past. And basically what it does, it takes water and pushes it through a very, very tiny membrane where almost only hydrogen and oxygen molecules can come out through it. So therefore, you have a little bit of dirty water that is staying on the outside of the membrane. When the water is pushed through the membrane, most of the impurities are stayed on the outside of the membrane, and clean water is pushed through the middle of the membrane, and then that is taken back to the river.
And finally, what are your final thoughts about this project and what it's going to mean to a lot of the communities you serve?
Well, first and foremost, this project being underway met a very, very important requirement that EPD put on Fulton County. When the large irrigation customers were using drinking water to serve their irrigation needs, that is actually in conflict with the water conservation plan that is in the Metro Atlanta area. So therefore, we became out of compliance with EPD, and they actually did not allow us to move 2 large construction projects forward at the Little River wastewater treatment plant and the Big Creek wastewater treatment plant until we actually fixed this area and provided reuse water back to these customers. So this project not only is serving a very good need of providing reuse water to the various customers, it's allowing us to move forward with some very much needed capital projects at some of our other wastewater treatment plants.
Great information and huge projects you're undertaking. David Clark, thank you for joining us here on Fulton at Work.
Thank you, anytime.
When we come back, library officials seek your input on improving your local library when renovation projects get underway. So please stay with us. Welcome back to Fulton at Work. I'm Darrell Carver. Blueprints are key to any construction project. In the case of Phase 2 of the library's capital improvement plan, your voice plays a big role in those blueprints. Now joining us to explain more is PR and Marketing Manager for the Atlanta Fulton Public Library System, Claudia Strange. First of all, Claudia, thank you for joining us here on Fulton at Work.
Thank you for having me, Darrell.
Now, for those who aren't familiar, tell us a little bit more about the library's capital improvement plan.
So the Library Capital Improvement Plan actually started with a library bond referendum that was approved by voters in 2008. The first phase of the program was to construct 8 new libraries and completely gut and renovate 2 others. Those include some like Alpharetta, Milton, Southeast Atlanta, South Fulton was one of our larger renovation projects, and the Auburn Avenue Research Library. And those basically were all part of our Phase 1 program, and we are now moving into Phase 2, which includes the renovation of 21 libraries.
Talk a little bit more about those libraries that are part of the Phase 2 renovation plans.
Sure. So basically all the remaining libraries are the ones that are being renovated as part of Phase 2. We've broken them down into smaller groups so that we can try to manage all of those projects simultaneously. The first group is the one that we're working through right now, and that includes Washington Park, Roswell, Sandy Springs, Dogwood, Kirkwood, a couple others, and we'll basically work through that group, get some public feedback, and then start working on our second group.
Now, why is the Atlanta Fulton Library System asking for community input in this case?
Well, the library system feels it's very important to get the community's feedback around each of the libraries being renovated so we can really find out from them what it is that they're using their library for, basically. So we'd like to make sure that if one library needs more computers than another, if one library needs study rooms versus meeting space or community meeting space, we want to know really what the day-to-day use of that library is. So we're making sure that each community has the opportunity to give their input, give us some feedback before we go to start the design process.
And we're going to play for you just a little bit of the input that we've received on this. And afterwards, I want to ask how some of that information will eventually be used.
I would love to see just more natural lighting. I love reading with that as opposed to the artificial.
I would like to see the libraries have more discovery zones in them, hands-on tactile places where kids want to come and hang out in the library.
We'd like to see it freshened up. We've been coming here. We lived here in the neighborhood for a while, and so she's been coming before she could walk. We brought her in here, and it would just be nice to see it spruced up a bit.
Now, when will phase 2 of the renovation project actually be finished?
So phase 2 of the library renovation project is scheduled to go through the end of 2019, assuming everything goes exactly according to plan. We know that with construction that can change, but that is our goal. We also didn't mention that as part of that phase 2 project is the massive renovation of the Central Library, which is our headquarters downtown Atlanta. And that will be the last library that we will renovate. So that could spill into 2020, but our plan is to finish by the end of 2019.
Now, you talked earlier about the phase 1 projects, if you can kind of refresh our viewers on that, and also talk about what lessons were learned coming out of such a massive undertaking.
So the phase 1 project, again, was the construction of 8 new libraries and the full renovation of renovation and expansion of 2 libraries. So the new libraries were all over the county. We had Milton Library, Alpharetta Library, East Roswell, Southeast Atlanta here in the city, Metropolitan, our Wolf Creek Library, our Palmetto Library. We also had, again, the Auburn Avenue Research Library and the South Fulton Library as part that did the massive renovations. Those were huge undertakings, as I'm sure you can imagine, and we're also started the same way we're doing this renovation project. We went to the communities, we gathered input. We also tried to fill some of those kind of library deserts that we had in the county where there wasn't real close proximity to certain communities. Palmetto, for example, Wolf Creek kind of met some of those needs for us. So that was taken into consideration during phase 1. We came across some delays with some of the projects that really you don't find out until you start breaking ground. We don't expect the same thing to happen because we're not changing square footage, we're not expanding with this second phase, so we'll hopefully not have some of those challenges. But really, once the contractors get into the space and get a chance to really look at what's in the walls and what needs to be replaced and upgraded, we'll get a better feel for what the length of time for the project will be.
Now, what's been the overall feeling of those 8 new libraries and the expansions at Auburn Avenue and South Fulton?
The feedback from the community has been fantastic. The communities love their new libraries. From North Fulton to Palmetto, we're just, everyone is so appreciative of the new space. We've brought in tons of new light into the buildings. We've got, overall just a beautiful library that's been built for these communities that didn't have libraries serving their population. We've had, great feedback from some of the technical resources that we have available in the new branches. They're all suited up with self-checkout machines, brand new computer spaces, fabulous new meeting rooms and facilities. We've got study rooms for tutoring sessions and small meetings, or just for a little quiet time. So that's, really been well received by the community, and you can tell by the busy space that you see every day in each of those new libraries.
And finally, in your opinion, why is the library so valuable to all of these communities that they serve?
Well, the library is a fabric of every community in which it resides. I mean, the library is so much more than just books to people. We have so many electronic resources. We have tutoring online for students who may be having a little trouble in school. We have e-resources like downloading books and music and movies. We have databases that students can research, or writers can even come in and research their books, and download some great and valuable information from those free resources that our residents and patrons get with their library cards. It's been awesome, and it's just so important to continue to support your library system. It's providing such an important service to the community.
Claudia Strange, thank you so much for your time. Great information there. And we'll be back to wrap up the show after this short break. Now that's all of our time. Thanks for joining us for Fulton at Work, and a very special thank you to our guests. Now we want to connect with you online, so please check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm Darrell Carver, and we'll see you next time.